All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Tishrei, Jerry and Sora Wolasky for dedicating over Shem and Drushos this month, and the zechus refuah sheleimah for their grandson Zecharya Dov ben Perel Shira, Shaindy and Avraham Kelman in memory of their beloved parents, and in the zechus of all those who need a refuah sheleimah. Dr. Linda Weinberg in loving memory of her husband Perez Moshe ben Avram, Leah Sol as a zechus for refuah sheleimah for her daughter Ilana bas Esther. Our week of learning sponsors Joel Hosner in thanks and in gratitude to the friends of the Israel Defense Forces, as FIDF, who need our support. To thank our Day of Learning sponsors, Avram Zysman in memory of his mother, Ziva bas Avram, on the occasion of her yahrzeit. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the neshamos will have an aliyah. All those who need a refuah should have one together with kol cholei Yisrael. And of course, we constantly learn and constantly daven in the zechus of our precious soldiers, in the zechus of Achinu b'nei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu should allow our soldiers to be successful in all of their endeavors, and Emeretz Hashem should shield our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael from all harm. So with that, let us begin. Today's daf is daf Samech. We are picking up Emeretz Hashem on somewhere way before daf Samech. Then test on the base. So we left off. I will say again. We left off Kasha Hilchasa Hilchasa. In the wide lines, it's about 2, 4, 6 lines in. So remember again, we ended off yesterday's daf by saying that the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan. Namely again, that asi dibor umevatel dibor. One act of speech could come and negate or upend a previous act of speech. So the Gemara says as follows, Kash hilchasa hilchasa. The problem is one halacha contradicts another halacha. Amarti hilchasa Rabbi Yochanan. You told us that the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan. V'kaimelon hilchasa Rav Nachman. And the halacha is also like Rav Nachman. Now what did Rav Nachman said? Di boilehu mash yachsra v'yigareshbo. So they had asked Rav Nachman, ultimately what happens if a husband sends a get with a shaliach and then goes ahead and runs, that we had this case actually yesterday's daf, then runs after the shaliach, goes ahead and tells the shaliach, I don't want to give the get. Can the husband then decide subsequently to still use that get? And what's halacha? Rav Nachman Amar Chazar Megarishbo. Rav Nachman said you can reuse the get. Rav Sheshes Amar Ina Chazar Megarishbo. Rav Sheshes said you can't reuse the get. The Kaimelon Hilchos Kavasid Rav Nachman, and the halacha follows Rav Nachman. Now again, the reason why this seems to be a contradiction is, isn't this a case of asi dibor umevatel dibor? Isn't this a case? Shouldn't this be a case of one act of speech negating another act of speech, right? Ruvain told the shaliach, go ahead and deliver the get to my wife. Then Ruvain said, don't deliver the get to my wife. So that's dibor mevatel dibor. And if that's the case, really the get should be voided, right? You shouldn't be able to use the get. Yet the halacha is that you can use the get. So that seems to contradict what you just said before. To which the Gemara says, no. Nihi de batle mitoras shaliach, mitoras get lo batle. Again, remember, when Ruvain runs after the shaliach, what is he doing? He's mevatel the shlichos. He's not mevatel the get. We actually, if remember in our Gittin days, we discussed this distinction between being mevatel, negating the shlichos, versus negating the actual document of the get itself. So therefore, again, these two halachas are not contradictory. In fact, again, we are passing like Rav Nachman, that if Ruvain runs after the shaliach and says, no, I don't want to give the get, and then he decides later on that he wants to give the get, he can reuse the same document. That's fine. But we do paskin like Reish Lakish, like Rabbi Yochanan, namely that asi dibor umevatel dibor. One act of dibor can negate another. So remember again, plugging that into our sugya. What's our sugya? Ruvain gives Rachel money. He says, Hari'at nekudesh asli la'achar shloshim yom. This is your kesef Kiddushin. It'll be chal after 30 days. After 30 days. So remember again, how do we get into this whole thing? If Rachel decides, and Rachel accepts it, if Rachel decides on day 15 that she doesn't want to marry Ruvain anymore, could she just simply say, no thank you? No thank you. Or does she need some type of maisa to go ahead and undo that dibur? So remember again, we end up getting like halacha l'maisa, like Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore she could just simply say no thank you. And once she says no thank you, that is the end of the conversation. That's asi dibor umevatel dibor. Incredible. Incredible. All right, let's go back there. Mikudeshes l'sheni. So I would say, so if you remember again, similarly, the Mishnah spoke about the idea. The Mishnah spoke about the idea that halacha l'maisa, if she goes ahead and, right, it's the same case as before. Reuven gives Rachel money, says Harayat mikudeshes li after 30 days. Then Shimon comes along within the 30 days and gives her money. What's the halacha? She's mikudeshes to Shimon. Mikudeshes to Shimon. So says the Gemara. Amarav mikudeshes to Sheni li olam. Rav says she's married to Shimon. That's it. She's married to Shimon, quote unquote, forever. Shmuel says mikudeshes l'sheni ad lamid yom. Shmuel says no. This is interesting. She's only mikudeshes to Shimon up until 30 days. Very interesting. After 30 days, Shimon's Kiddushin falls off, and Reuven's Kiddushin comes in. Okay, so the Gemara says, so Rav Chisda said, that doesn't make any sense. Kiddushi sheni b'may paki. I don't understand what I say. If you're telling me that the Kiddushin to to Shimon works, if that's actually true, the Kiddushin to Shimon works, then how does it, paki also means like it's removed. How is it removed? Amar Rav Yosef, Mar, Aresha Masni Lavakashile. So the truth is, there is a machlokas as to how to frame the machlokas. Thank you so much. Thank you. Amen. So both say there's an interesting machlokas as to how to frame the machlokas. So remember again, here's what we have. We have machlokas Rav and Shmuel. Rav says she's mikudeshes to the second guy, we'll call him Shimon, forever. Shmuel says she's mikudeshes to the second guy up until the kiddushin of the first guy kicks in. There's machlokes now as to which case in the Mishnah the machlokes applies to. Machlokes on the machlokes. So the Gemara says, listen to this. The Gemara Amar Rav Yosef, Mar Aresha Masnei V'Kashlei. So one opinion frames the machlokes as referring to the Reisha. Also remember again, the Reisha is Reuven gives Rachel money. Harayat mikudeshes li la'achar shloshim yom. So one goes ahead and frames the machlokes on the Reisha, and again, ultimately, and the problem with framing it on the Reisha is the statement of Shmuel, that I understand that if the Kiddushin of the second guy of Shimon works, how does it just simply fall away after 30 days? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, Seifa Masni Lavalo Kashile. Rabbi Yehuda, however, again, understands this machlokes as referring to the Seifa, the end of the Mishnah, and he doesn't have a kasha. Both remember again, what was the Seifa? The Seifa was Mi'achshav Vi'ad Shloshim, Mi'achshav Ula Achar Shloshim Yom. So also remember again, what was the Seifa case? The Seifa case was, Reuven gives Rachel money, and he says to her, this Hariat Mikudeshes Li, Me'achshav Ula Achar Shloshim Yom. From now. Now, both say, what does that little word Me'achshav do? What does that do? Retroactivity clause. So now watch this. Rav Amar Mikudeshes Ve'ina Mikudeshes Li Olam. So Rav says, ultimately again, the second guy could be Mikudeshes, but not Mikudeshes, right, the Olam, which means what? I will say that, technically speaking, during the 30 days, could the Kiddushin of the second guy work? Could it work? It could work. What's the problem? Once the end of the 30 days comes, retroactivity clause is triggered. Once retroactivity clause is triggered, then what happens? Retroactively, the first Kiddushin was Chal, which means that retroactively, at the time that she received the second Kiddushin, she was already married. What's the effect of receiving second Kiddushin once you're already married? What's the effect? Well, it's bad, right? Not good for one shalom bayis, right? But Lamaisa doesn't work. Totally inconsequential. Shmuel says, Mikudeshes ve'ina Mikudeshes ela ad lamed yom. Shmuel says ultimately again, she's Mikudeshes, but ultimately again, not in Mikudeshes and only until 30 days. Li achar lamed paki kiddushay sheni v'gamri kiddushay rishon. Shmuel says, no. When Shimon gives her the kiddushin, she's Mikudeshes. Right? But what? The kiddushin only lasts up until 30 days. Because once the 30th day comes, then retroactively she's married to guy number one, and then again Kiddushin number two falls away. So the Gemara says, so an interesting idea. So the Rav, Misapkale, Itinahavi Ichazaravi. Now we'll say, what is at the core of all of this is the following. When a man says, right, to Rachel, Reuven goes over to Rachel and he says, "Sorry, at nikudeshas li me'achshav ula'achar shloshim yom." So I will say, if you look at that phrase, it's inherently contradictory. Right? Why is it inherently contradictory? Me'achshav means now. La'achar shloshim yom means later. So how do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile that? So I will say, so now listen to this. Rav wasn't sure. So on one hand, you could look at it like a t'nai. Like a t'nai. What's the t'nai? What's the condition? After 30 days, you will be retroactively married to me, right? Retroactively to this point. Or chazara. Or is it a retraction? As Rabbi say, the way you could read this, the way you could read that statement is, means it's a t'nai, it's a condition. That after 30 days, there's a retroactivity clause that is triggered, and ultimately, again, we'll be married up until this point, or retroactively we're married from this point. Or, it's a retraction. Reuven said, it's like, yeah, you know what, I still have a couple of things I'd like to do in my single life, right? So let's actually make it la'achar shloshim yom. Steve, thank you so much. Thank you, I'm sorry. Sorry for the tircha.
My pleasure.
But no, but instead, let's make it after 30 days. Let's make it after 30 days. So that's the shaila. Is it a t'nai, or is it a retraction? So the Gemara says, "Itinai havi, ichazara havi." The Shmuel pshitale de tina havi. According to Shmuel, ultimately again he sees it that it's pashit, that it's a tinai. Or beplukta dahani tanoi. And I will say this is the machlokes of the following machlokes tanoim. Disanya mehayom ula achar misa. So we'll say so again. So that's what's driving this. Rav is not sure. At the end of the day, is this a t'nai or is it a chazara? Shmuel sees it pashit that it's a t'nai. So the Gemara says, so the Pluta t'nai, the Sanyo, Mayom Ola Achar means a get ve'eno get. So we'll say we have the parallel machlokes ultimately again by Gittin. What happened by Gittin? Right? The man says, this is your get from today and after my death. Get ve'eno get. It's a suffix get, according to the Chachamim. Rabbi Omer kazeh get. Rabbi says ultimately again it's a get. So we'll say, what's the machlokes over here? Chachamim aren't sure about this statement. This is your get from today, right? And after I die. So is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? And therefore, again, if it's a t'nai, fine. If it's a retraction, it doesn't work. Why not? Because then when does he want the get to be chal? After he dies. He can't give a posthumous get. So the Chachamim weren't sure. Rabbi says, no, it's a t'nai. It's a t'nai and it's totally fine. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. So if that's the case, v'neima Rav halacha ki Rabbanon, v'neima Shmuel halacha ki Rabbi. So why doesn't Rav just simply say that halacha is like the Rabbanon by the case of Gittin, and just let Rabbi say the halacha is like, just let Shmuel say that halacha is like Rabbi, to which the Gemara says, no, tzricha. You need both cases. Why? Di'ilu amar Rav halacha ki Rabbanon, if Rav would have just said the halacha is Rabbanon, hava amina hasam, d'lechoka ka'asi, by get, ultimately again, that's where he espouses his position, because there that he's trying to distance his wife, so to speak. But over here by Kiddushin, Shmuel, maybe he would agree with Shmuel that it's a t'nai. The Amar Shmuel halacha k'Rebbe, and Shmuel is halacha like Rebbe. Hava mina hasam hu de'in get. It's only in that case where it's not a get. Why? But here there's nothing wrong with framing Kiddushin to take effect after 30 days. Rav, you should agree with Rav. Therefore, you need both independent cases. So both sides. So therefore, what we are left with is a fundamental machlokes, Rav and Shmuel. Essentially, whenever you make one of these statements, right? How do you understand these phrases? Are they a t'nai? So Shmuel understands it's a condition. It's triggering a retroactivity clause. But Rav is saying, I'm just not sure. Maybe it's a retraction. Maybe he originally wanted the transaction to take effect now, and then he changed his mind and he wants it to take effect later. So again, according to Rav, all of these cases are going to be suffix. According to Shmuel, all of these cases are bona fide t'nai. Incredible. So according to Rav's logic, so now watch this. So according to Rav, so Rav is not sure ultimately again in these cases, is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? So now Abai says like this. According to Rav, who's not sure, listen to the following case. Reuven comes along and says to Rachel, gives her money, this is your kesef Kiddushin from now and after 30 days. Okay, watch this. But say it's not over. Shimon comes along. Oh, so Shimon comes along and says, this is your Kiddushin now, from now, and after 20 days, and it gets better, type of Samich. Levi, right, it's a party. Levi comes along and says, this is your Kiddushin from now, and after 10 days. So we'll say, what's the halacha? So she's going to need a get from Ruvain and from Levi. But she's not going to need a get ultimately again from Shimon. Manavshach, why not? Itinahavi. If it's a Tanai, so they go ultimately again the Kama Kiddushe, the Hanach Lav Kiddushe. I don't understand. Let me understand this. If you hold that these type of statements are a Tanai, then ultimately again the first one affected Kiddushin. The first one affected Kiddushin. The Kame Kiddushin, the Hanach Lav Kiddushe. Then the rest are not Kiddushin. Ichazora Havi. If it's a retraction, then the Basra Kiddushin, then the last guy's Kiddushin is an effective Kiddushin. The Hanach Lav Kiddushin, Rabbi say, because the last guy, remember again, the last guy is the shortest duration, right? He's the guy who's affecting Kiddushin ultimately within 10 days. So therefore, again, if that's the case, right? If it's a retraction, the Basra Kiddushi, the Hanach Lav Kiddushi, ultimately, again, then the last guy, we called him Levi, the last guy's Kiddushin should be good, the rest should not be good. So why would she require a get from 1 and 3? To which the Gemara says, Ma'udatema, Hai Lishna, Mashma Tina, Umashma Chazara, Viti Boy Gita Mikol Chad V'chad. I would have thought, Rabbi said that what? Maybe the Lashon is both a Tanai as well as a chazara. And ultimately, again, I shouldn't say so, in other words, it has both connotations. And therefore, just to be on the safe side, we should require a get from all three of the parties. Kamash Mala, not so. Okay. Ula Am Rabbi Yochanan, Afilu Mea Tov Simba. They will say, Ula says in Rabbi Yochanan, it's not true. Even if this happened 100 times, in other words, this scenario that we just mentioned before, even if it literally happened 100 times, ultimately, again, Kiddushin would work. Now, we'll say, obviously, when we say Kiddushin would work, what that would mean is we would require a get from each of these individuals. I'll explain to Rabbi Yochanan's logic. It's actually very interesting. Shavu nafshei kishraga delivni. These men who have been mekadesh her, they've arranged themselves like a row of bricks. What's the pshat of the row of bricks? The chol chad v'chad ravcha l'charei masar. Both say it's fascinating. You can see this if you walk outside of davening and look at our new mikdash ma'at. They're putting up the block by the front of the building. So I'll say when you put up bricks, when you put up block, you don't put up block like one right next to the other. There's space. There's space. Now that space ultimately is where the mortar, I guess it's mortar, right? Where the mortar goes, that holds everything together. So the Gemara says these guys who are being mekadesh, this same woman, but with different durations, they're like rows of bricks where there's room, there's a little bit of room in between each brick. Now the metaphor is, there's a little bit of room for the next guy's Kiddushin to go ahead and somehow take effect in some way. So Shavit, let's say it's also just an incredible metaphor for Achdus. You can learn a lot. I don't know. Because this is happening right outside of my window of my office. I learn a lot. There's like a lot of daily musar that I see from the building. This notion of the block is fascinating. I would say when you look at the block, you look at the finished product. So ultimately, everything is together, right? There's a profound achdus in the blocks, right? If one of the blocks decides he doesn't want to be a block, he wants to be a beam. He wants to be, the whole thing falls apart. It's uniform. It's there. I would say, but how do you achieve achdus? Every brick has to give the other one a little bit of room. You see, if the bricks are on top of each other, right? The bricks are on top of each other, then ultimately, again, there's no room for the mortar. There's no cohesion. If the bricks give each other, the blocks give each other a little bit of room, then suddenly, again, everything comes together to be a beautiful edifice. What does it mean to give each other a little bit of room in the context of Klal Yisrael? People say, sometimes we're so exacting of each other, right? Someone doesn't do exactly what I want them to do, how I do it, when I want them to do it. It doesn't say, and this happens in marriage, it doesn't say exactly what I want them to do, how I want them to say it. We get so upset, and we get so angry, and we get so resentful. If you want to build a beautiful edifice of achdus, one brick has to give the other brick a little bit of space. There's got to be a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing space. None of us are perfect. By definition, we go ahead and we make mistakes, and we do things we're not supposed to do, say things we're not supposed to say. If we just give each other the little bit of space, right, in between bricks, then we could come together to build a beautiful edifice. So the Gemara says as follows: Masiv Rav Chanina, mehayom la'achar misa. Ultimately, again, if he says from today, right, this is the get. This is back to the get case, right? So Reuven gives Rachel a get. He says, this is your get from today until after I die, or ula achar misa, and when I die. So what's halacha? Get ve'eno get. Rabbi say it's a suffix get. Now Rabbi say, now this is in line with the position of Rav, right? Why? Because we don't know what is he saying. Is that a t'nai or is it a retraction? So the Gemara says, Bishlama, so here it is, Bishlama, so what's the halacha? Get ve'eno get, ve'emes, therefore if Ruvain died, choletzes v'lo mesyavemes. Ultimately, again, Rachel has to do chalitza, and doesn't do yibum. So Bishlama, the Rab Misayele, so this makes perfect sense according to Rav, right? Rabbi say, why? Because the whole position of Rav is that halacha l'maisa, we don't know, is such a statement, a t'nai, or is it a retraction? The Shmuel nami hamani rabbanani. What's according to Shmuel? Whose opinion is it? It's the rabbanon. Va'anam da'amri karebi. So we'll say, Shmuel will say, okay, look. We'll say, this is also, we've mentioned this many times. So we'll say, the Gemara was raising this as a kasha on Shmuel. Right? Because according to Rav, this makes perfect sense. Rav is not sure. Is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? Therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, it's a safek get. And if Ruvain dies, ultimately she's going to have to do chalitza and no yibum. So the Gemara brings this up as obviously works with the position of Rav, but it's a kasha on Shmuel. Shmuel says, it's not a kasha on me. Why isn't it a kasha on me? It reflects a different opinion. I would say sometimes the greatest thing in life is when one could acknowledge that differing opinions exist. That's it. Shmuel says, it's only a kasha if you think, right, that every single brayso has to reflect my opinion. But I acknowledge the fact that there are differing opinions in the world. So since this is the Rabbanon, and therefore, again, it's not a steer to me. Incredible. So the Gemara says, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, who holds also that in these kind of cases, where there's, let's say, repeated gittin or repeated kiddushin, ultimately, again, where each person leaves a little bit of space for the next, that doesn't work by gittin. Kol gita d'mishayer bavalo klumu. We'll say any get which leaves intact some vestige of marriage is not a get. Again, this is like Gittin 101. What does a get do? A get is a davar hakores beino lebeino. It is saying that absolutely, wholly and unequivocally severs marital bonds. If it doesn't do that, then it's not a get. So how would this even be a safek get? To which the Gemara says, "V'lo klomu yivu miyabim," and therefore, in the case where he gave this kind of get, halach l'maisa, not only should she should be able to do yibum if she wants to. Amarava, no. Get lahotzi misa lahotzi. Both a get and death accomplish the same thing. They both extract the woman from marriage. Mashashir get gemarasa misa, whatever the get left over, death finished up. Amalei Abayik, how can you compare that? Mi dami. Get motziem yeshus yavam, misa machnisa l'shus yavam. On one hand, I will say a get removes her from the domain of yavam. Obviously, after giving a get, there is no longer any kind of yibum. But ultimately, again, misa, death, enters her into the Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Hasam Time Amai. What's the reason over there? Gzera Mishubai Bagin. In other words, why is it that ultimately? In other words, why is it that in the case of Mehayom Ula Achar Misa, it's a safek get? In other words, I will say what the Gemara is essentially saying is there really shouldn't be such a thing as a safek get, because any get that leaves intact some vestige of marriage is not a get. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, Gzera mishum mehayom imasi hareze get. Rabbi say what we are concerned about is the case of mehayom imasi. From today, if I die, Rabbi say mehayom imasi is a valid get. So we're concerned that is different ultimately again than mehayom ula achar misa. So that case works. So we're concerned that if we say that in the case of mehayom ula achar misa, it's for sure not a get, one will come to confuse that with the case of mehayom imasi. So the Gemara says, mehayom imasi detachlos, atu mehayom ula achar misa. So why don't you go there? Therefore, in the case of mehayom imasi, that you should have to do chalitza, lest you come to confuse it ultimately again with mehayom ula achar misa. First, why line of say im ata omer choletzes misyavemes. The Gemara says, Hachanami im ata omer chol letzes misyav emes. Because we're concerned, we'll say, remember again, chalitza yibum are two sides of the same coin. So we're concerned that ultimately, again, if we mandate chalitza, she could also think that she could do yibum. I say the same thing over here, that Allah Chalamayse, if she thinks that if you tell her to do chalitza, she thinks she could do yibum. To which the Gemara says, who cares? Tisyav, let her do yibum. Ve'im bekach klum. I'm not concerned about that because chashasha d'Rabbanan. It's only an issue midrabanan. So we'll say, so bottom line, okay, so now this is the end of the sugya. So we'll say, so this is a yesodistic idea that we have to analyze here just for a couple of moments. So here's what we have, just to kind of rack up the halachas that we've seen. So halacha number one that's very important, we'll say, is that we paskin ultimately again like Rabbi Yochanan, that asi dibor umevatal dibor, right? One act of speech can negate a previous act of speech, which is why in the case that is this, right, in the Reisha of the Mishnah, Reuven comes over to Rachel, gives her money. Hariat mikudeshes li la'achar shloshim yom. Kiddushin will be after 30 days. Day 15, she decides she doesn't want it. What's the halacha? She could simply walk away. And absolutely no problem. Now, Rabbi will say, our challenging case is what happens in the case of Hariat mikudeshes li me'achshav ula'achar shloshim yom, right? This is your get from now and after 30 days. So I will say, so here is where we had now. So again, if nothing happens, and 30 days go by, so she's married. The sheleimah that comes up is what happens if she accepts Kiddushin from another man during those 30 days. So I will say, so this is machlokes Rav and Shmuel, and what this has to do with is me'achshav ula'achar shloshim yom. Is that a t'nai or is that a attraction? So I will say, so now listen to this. So the Rambam writes as follows. The Rambam says, "Hariat mikudeshes li me'achshav ula'achar shloshim yom b'dinar zeh, uba achar v'kitsha b'soch shloshim yom, harei mikudeshes misafek l'shneihem." So Rabbi says, this is Rambam Hilchos Yishos Parak Zayin Alocha Yud Beis. So ultimately, Rabbi says the Rambam really paskins like Rav. Yeah, we're not sure. It's a suffix. Is the statement ultimately, again, is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? So the Rambam says it's a suffix. Therefore, what? Lefichach shneihem nostim get bein besoch shloshim bein la'achar shloshim yom. So both say, so therefore the Rambam paskins that halacha l'maisa, in this case of me'achshav, if a second person comes along and gives her kiddushin during the 30 days, who is she married to? Is she married to guy number one because of retroactivity clause? Is she married to guy number two because it wasn't a retroactivity clause, it was a retraction? So therefore it's a suffix. Because it's a suffix, she's going to require a get, ultimately again from both individuals. So halacha l'maisa, the Rambam paskins like Rav. Incredible. So we'll say, so we paskin again, so essentially the takeaways are, we paskin like Rav Yochanan, that asi dibor umevatal dibor, and we paskin like Rav, that me'achshav ula'achar shloshim yom, we don't know what to do with that statement. Is that a t'nai or is it a retraction? It's a suffix, and therefore again, if another man does in fact give her kiddushin during those days, during those 30 days, we would require a get from both individuals. Okay, incredible. Mishnah. Ha'omer le'isharei at mikudeshes le'alana she'etei lach masayim zuz. There's some more cases of Tanaim. So a man says to a woman, Reuven goes over to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that I give you 200 zuz. So Harezim Mikudeshes Vuyitein. Okay, so that's fine. She's Mikudeshes and he has to give her money. So if he says, this is your Kiddushin on the condition that I give you the get from now until 30 days, what's the halacha? Nasan la b'soch shlosh yom Mikudeshes. Or we'll say, so this is a classic Tanai. If he gives her the money within 30 days, then she's Mikudeshes. Ve'im lav, ain't Mikudeshes. Ultimately, we'll say, so again, I want to be clear, there's no retroactivity clause over here, right? This is, he's just simply saying, if I give you money within the next 30 days, you're Mikudeshes, and if not, you're not Mikudeshes. He doesn't have to say if not, but you're not Mikudeshes. So it's fine. If he gives her the money in 30 days, she's married. If he doesn't give her the money within 30 days, she's not married. Simple cases. Amanas, sheyesh li masayim zuz. Let's say he says, you become Mikudeshes on the condition that I have 200 zuz, harezim Mikudeshes v'yesh lo. Fine. So if he, again, I will say straightforward cases. If he has 200 zuz, so she's Mikudeshes. Doesn't have 200 zuz, she's not Mikudeshes. Amanas she'erech masayim zuz. Let's say he says to her, you're married to me on the condition that I show you 200 zuz. What's the halacha? Harezu mikudeshes v'ira'ala. She's mikudeshes, assuming that what? He shows her the money. Show me the money. V'im hira ala shulchan ena mikudeshes. It's very interesting. If he's a money changer, right, the shulchani, and he shows her ultimately again 200 zuz on the table, then ultimately she's not mikudeshes. Why not, Rabbi? Because bepashtos, or possibly, it's not his. In other words, when he says become mikudeshes on the condition that I show you 200 zuz, what's understood in that statement is I'm going to show you who's 200 zuz, my 200 zuz. In other words, we'll say, if he works in a bank, and takes her to the vault and says, look at all these zuzim over here, so obviously that's not going to work because Lamaisa, that's not his. Good. So let's go back to Itmar. So I'll say, now let's focus on this for just a moment. First case. Reuven goes over to Rachel, says, you are married to me on the condition that I give you 200 zuz. So we'll say, by the way, I know everyone understands it, but I'm just going to mention it. Of course, obviously all these cases only work if the woman consents to it, right? I know it sounds strange, right? It sounds like the guy's going over to, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to take charge kind of the guy, right? Here's the deal, right? Here's the money, and then we're married. It's like, so obviously I will say it's understood. Kiddushin doesn't happen without the consent of the woman. We're just focusing on this from the man's transactional perspective, right? So I'll say, so what happens? So I'll say, so now Reuben goes over to Rachel. He says, become mikudeshes on the condition that I give you 200 zuz. Okay, so we'll say, so now there's a machlokes on the mechanics. Itmar, Rav Huna Amar, Vohu Yitain. Rav Huna says, fine. The halacha is, when he gives her the money, the Kiddushin is retroactively chal to the time that they entered into this marriage. So in other words, if he goes over to her on Thursday, right, and says, right, we're married on the Kiddushin, I give you 200 zuz, and he gives her the money on Sunday. He gives her the money on Sunday, Rav Huna says, no problem. When he gives the money on Sunday, retroactively they're married to Thursday. Right? Fine. Rav Huna Amar Lechishit. Rav Huna says, no. There's no retroactivity over here. When are they married? When he gives her the money. So on Sunday, when he gives her the money, at the end of the day, they'll be married as of Sunday. Rav Huna Amar Vahu Yitain Tina Havi Mekayim. Rav Huna Amar Vahu Yitain Tina Havi Mekayim Tina Avazil. So ultimately, Rav Huna says it's a Tanai. Right? That here's what he's saying. It become mikudeshes. Essentially, what he's saying is become mikudeshes to me. Parentheses. As of now, when I give you the money. So whenever he gives her the money, ultimately the Kiddushin is retroactively chal. Rav Yehuda Amar Lechishe Yitain Lechiyav Havi Kiddushay Hashta Mihu Lo Havi Kiddushay. Rav Yehuda says there's no Tanai. Right? There's no Tanai. Or there's a condition, but there's not a Tanai. In other words, I should say it differently. There's a condition, there's no retroactivity. There's retroactivity. So therefore, whenever he gives her the money, they'll be married from that moment going forward. So what's the practical difference between these two opinions? So interesting, the Gemara feels it's obvious. Well, so there's a big nafkamina. A nafkamina, she meets a wonderful guy on Friday named Shimon. Right? It's love at first sight. She accepts Kiddushin from him. Only one little issue. She never told Reuven. Reuven gives her the money on Sunday. So I'll say, so according to Rav Huna, now the Kiddushin of Shimon is void, right? Because ultimately, again, the Kiddushin of Reuven is retroactive. According to Rav Yehuda, no, that's it. Reuven lost his chance, and the Kiddushin to Shimon is good. To which the Gemara says, Utinan nabi gabi gittin. We see the same concept by gittin. What happened by gittin? Ki agavna. Homer li'isharei zegitech amra shetitn li'masayim zos. I will say this is the reverse case, right? In this case, Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition you give me 200 zuz. So Rabbi says, so right, in other words, essentially what Reuven is doing over here is demanding money for the get, which of course is unequivocally wrong, morally reprehensible, and should never be done. But nevertheless, he's doing it. So ultimately, again, he's saying, this is your get on the condition you give me 200 zuz. Harez migurashes v'hititain. Ultimately, again, Rabbi say, so what's the halacha? She's migurashes and she owes him the money. So what's the shaila, Rabbi say? What's the shaila? When is she migureshes as of? So Rav Huna Amar V'hu V'hititin. Rav Huna says when she gives the money, the get is retroactively chal ultimately again to the moment he gave it to her. Rabbi Yehuda said, no, the chishatite, no, there's no retroactivity over here. When she gives the money, then she is divorced. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna Amar v'hi titein havi tina, so v'hi titein tina havi mekaymet tina v'azla. Rav Huna says it's a Tanai, and therefore the Tanai triggers retroactivity. Rav Yehuda Amar l'chishatite l'chiyavi lehavigita hashta miya lo haviget. So we'll say same machlokes. So all the Gemara is pointing out over here is we'll say the same machlokes Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda that applies by Kiddushin applies by Gittin. It's the same fundamental machlokes, which is when you go ahead and you attach, this is your Kiddushin on right when I give you money, or this is your get when I receive money. So I will say so again. Rav Yehuda will say there's a retroactivity clause that is built into this, and therefore as soon as the money is given, the get or Kiddushin is retroactively chal to the moment that it was given. That's Rav Huna. Rav Yehuda says there's no retroactivity over here. The either the kiddushin or the gittin is chal when the actual money is given. So the Gemara says Amud Beis my benau, but as Psalm 60 be my benau. We'll say what's the practical difference in these two opinions by gittin. Ikabenayu sheniskara haget. We'll say very interesting. Let's say Ruvain gives Rachel the get on Thursday, right? And here's the condition: this is your get when you Rachel give me Ruvain 200 zuz. Fine. So now what happens? On Friday, the get is destroyed. Friday, the get is destroyed. Sunday, she gives him the money. So Rabbi says, listen to this. Rav Huna, have a get. According to Rav Huna, when she gives him the money on Sunday, the get is valid. Why? Because according to Rav Huna, there's a retroactivity clause that's triggered. Rav Yehuda lo have a get. According to Rav Yehuda, ultimately there's no retroactivity. And therefore, again, when is the get chal? When she gives the money. When did she give the money? On Sunday. What was the status of the get on Sunday? Destroyed. There's no get to talk of, and therefore, again, she is not divorced. Shabbos says, so therefore, same machlokes, Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, both by Gittin as well as by Kiddushin. Shabbos say, and again, it's the same fundamental. Essentially, we're going to, what's the machlokes? The machlokes is, does a Tanai come with an inherent retroactivity clause or not? That's really the machlokes. Rav Huna essentially says, every Tanai comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. Rav Yehuda says, no it doesn't. The only thing ultimately, you know what creates retroactivity clause? According to Rav Yehuda, say what creates retroactivity clause? One word. What's the one word? Me'achshav. A retroactivity clause, you could do it, but it's got to be explicitly built in. So the Gemara says, now the obvious question about say is, why do I need two cases over here? If it indeed is the same achlokas, why do I need the same achlokas stated both by Gittin and by Kiddushin? Here's what I'll tell you why. You need both. If we would have just said the machlokas by Kiddushin, that's the case where Rav Huna says that there's a retroactivity clause. Why? Mishum de krova kasi. Because we'll say it makes sense. He wants to marry this woman, so it makes sense to create the chalos, the halachic actualization of the Kiddushin as early as possible. Aval gerushin de l'recholka kasi. But by Gerushin, ultimately, again, what's his intention? To push her away. Maybe even Rav Huna agrees that we delay that as long as possible. And who had just said the Gerushin case? That's the case Rabbi Yehuda ultimately says his position. Why? Because a man is not embarrassed to ask a woman for money. But I will say by Kiddushin, where she may be a bit more reticent to ask him for money, perhaps Rav Huna agrees with Rav Yehuda. Therefore, tzvicha. Therefore, in both cases, fine. Rabbi say, but bottom line, it is the same machlokes by both cases. When a Tanai is made, hari'at mikudeshesli, when I give you 200 zuz, right? Or hari'at migureshesli, when you give me 200 zuz. So Rav Huna telling us that Allah Chalamaisa, when the money is given by the Kiddushin case from man to woman, by Gerushin case from woman to man, the Kiddushin and the Gerushin retroactively chal to the moment that the transaction occurred. Rav Yehuda is saying absolutely not. Both Kiddushin as well as Gerushin only chal from the moment the money was given and going forward. So listen to this. Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you give me 200 zuz. So what's the halacha? Afa pishin is kara haget o sha'avad, even if the get, both say, was torn or was destroyed, hare zu migureshes. Ultimately, again, she's divorced. La'achar tinase, but she shouldn't really get remarried. Ad shetitain v'od, until she gets another get. In other words, both say, so here's what's interesting. So just to clarify the case, right? Reuven gives Rachel a get on Thursday. He says, this is your get on the condition that you give me 200 zuz. So both say, so what's the halacha? Even though, again, now the assumption over here, she hasn't yet given the money. Now what happened? The get was destroyed. On Friday, the get was destroyed. So what does the Braisa say? She is divorced. She's divorced, ultimately, again, but she really should get another get before she gets married. Because also remember again, the get is her proof of divorce. So getting remarried, that proof of divorce is a serious roll of the dice, a serious danger. So I'll say, so again, this seems to support the position of Rav Huna that there's a retroactivity clause that's built in. Votanya, furthermore we learned, Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition you give me 200 zuz, umeis. And now Reuven died. Right? So we'll say, so Nasna, if she had paid him the money before he died, Ein Zekuk Yavam. Ultimately, there's no Yibum. Right? Lo Nasna, what if she didn't give the money? Zekuk Yavam. Ultimately, again, then Rabbi says she's subject to Yibum. Rabbi Shimon says, no, senes la'achav, o la'aviv, o la'acham min akrovim. Very sure. So Rabbi Shimon says, even after Reuven died, she can give it to one of his relatives. And that satisfies the Tanai. Now I will say, ad kan lo pligi, ela demar savar, li velo liarshai, or liarshi, umar savar afil liarshi. And I will say, the machlokes is, when the man makes this Tanai, when Reuven makes this Tanai, is he saying, this money is payable only to me and not to my inheritors? Or no, technically the money is payable even to my inheritors. However, to kuli alma mia tinai hava. But I will say what comes clear over here, I will say, is the clear understanding from these brisas is that there is a tanai with a retroactivity clause that is built into this, right? I should say differently. This is a tanai with a built-in retroactivity clause. I will say, who does that support? That supports Rav Huna. That's Rav Huna's position. Utiyufta Rabbi Huda. And it seems to refute the position of Rabbi Huda. Also remembering, as Rabbi Huda is always of the position that when ultimately, again, is the transaction valid, when the money is tendered. Only when the money is tendered is the so we'll say all of these brises reflect that, no, that's not true. That the actual transaction is valid, ultimately retroactively. Rabbi Huda will say, no. Hamani, will say, whose opinion is reflected in these brises? Rabbi Dam Rav Huna Rabbi Kala Omer Amanas Ke Omer Me'achshav Dami Opliga Rabbanon Alei Vanan Dami Rabbanon. So we'll say, here it is. This is at the core of this machlokes. I will say, the machlokes Rav Huna and Rabbi Huda is really a machlokes Rabbi and the Rabbanon, which is whenever you go ahead and you say Amanas, whenever you make a condition, does a condition come with a built-in retroactivity clause? Rabbi says yes. Kala Omer al Menas, whenever you say on the condition, Ki Omer Me'achshav. Every condition by definition comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. The Rabbanon disagree. The Rabbanon don't disagree that you could build in a retroactivity clause. But rather, what do they hold? They hold that what? You have to articulate it. You have to say Me'achshav. In other words, when you say on the condition does not automatically mean from now. Doesn't automatically build an Shabbos say, that's it. At the core of all of this, Shabbos say, is when Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get, or this is your Kiddushin, on the condition that I give you, or you give me, 200 zuz. Shabbos say, do we understand that he's saying that the Kiddushin, the get, should be chal as of now, or not, or when the money is given? So ultimately, again, Rabbi Yehuda will hold like the Rabbanon, that no, anytime you make a condition does not automatically imply retroactivity clause. Whereas Rav Huna holds like Rabbi, who says, yes, there is. Incredible, that's the machlokas. Gufa, so I'll say, let's analyze a little bit more. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rabbi, Kolo Omer Amanas Kar Me'achshav Dami. So I'll say, so again, Rabbi holds that whenever you say Amanas on the condition always comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. Amar Rabbi Zera, Ki Avina Bavel, when I was in Bavel, Hava Aminan, Hada Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rabbi, Kolo Omer Amanas Kar Me'achshav Dami. So Pligi Rabbanan Alei. So we'll say, when I was in Bavel, so again, the gears to the understanding we had was, Rabbi holds, Kolo Omer Almanas, is Komer Me'achshav. Whenever you say on the condition comes with a built-in retroactivity clause, and the Rabbanan disagree. Ki Salki Lahasam, but yet when I went to Eretz Yisrael, Ashke Chel Rav Asi Diyasev V'Kamlim Shed Rabbi Yochanan, I heard Rav Asi sing over the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hakom Odim Ba'omer Almanas, Everyone agrees that when you say almanas, it's as if it's like achshav from now. It's a built-in retroactivity clause. So what's the machlokes? Lo nechelku ela mehayom ula'achar misa. There's only a very specific machlokes regarding the verbiage of mehayom, from today, la'achar misa, and after I die. Now both say that's a gittin case, right? That's a gittin case. Reuven gives Rachel a get. And he says to her, "This is your get from today and after my death." So both say we just spoke about this before. Vatani, we learned mehayom la'achar misa get ve'eno get tivrechem. Rabbi Omer kazah get. But both say, but we just said before that exact case mehayom ula'achar misa. And I both say the reason why is this so. What's the halacha? If Reuven gives Rachel again, he says to her, "This is your get from today and after my death." So we'll say, so remember again, the Chachamim say suffix get. Suffix get. Why is it suffix get? I will say, why is it suffix get? Because we don't know what he's saying. Again, is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? Right? Ultimately, again, is he saying it's the get from today, and when I die, it's triggered as of today? Or ultimately, again, is he trying to give a pastumus get, which obviously doesn't work? Rabbi says, no, this is a get. It's a t'nai. So the Gemara says, Ul Rav Yehuda, so now watch this. So just to understand what's happening over here. So Rabbi Zera says, in Bavel, so the way we understood the machlokes Rabbi and the Rabbanon was that in any case of almanas, that was the machlokes Rabbi and the Rabbanon. In any case of almanas, Rabbi holds almanas has a built-in retroactivity clause. The Rabbanon disagree. When I came to Eretz Yisrael, so the way they were learning in the base medrash is no, there's no machlokes. Everyone agrees that almanas on the condition comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. So what's the machlokes? The machlokes was in a specific case of gittin of mehayom ula'achar misa. That was the machlokes case. Rabbi holds that's a t'nai. The Rabbanon held, we don't know what that is. That is contradictory lashon. We don't know. Maybe it's a t'nai, or maybe it's a retraction. Therefore, it'll have to be a suffix get. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who said that they argue on almanas, so the Gemara says, niflog ba'almanas. So if that's the case, again, instead of arguing on the case of mehayom la'achar misa, let them argue on almanas as well. Lo diacha kochol de Rabbi. It's coming to tell you the koach of Rabbi. Nami get. Rabbi said, because again, coming to highlight the power of Rabbi's position, namely that halacha l'maisa, even in the case of mehayom la'achar misa, it still works, according to Rabbi. I have a niflagi ba'almanas, so why don't you go ahead and argue in almanas? And show me the power of the Rabbanan's position, that even in the case of almanas, ultimately again, the Rabbanan still argue, and say again that it doesn't work. It's not a retroactivity clause. But in general, whenever we have the ability to illustrate the power of permissiveness, right? The koach de'atera, that's what we would rather do. So therefore, I will say, what we are left with over here is a fundamental machlokes. It's both Rabbi and the Rabbanon and Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. And it's a fundamental machlokes. What is a fundamental machlokes? When you say almanas on the condition, does almanas come with an implied retroactivity clause? So you've got Rabbi and Rav Huna saying yes, Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanon saying no. Now we have another machlokes and that machlokes. Apparently, that's the way they understood the machlokes in Bavel. In Eretz Yisrael, they understood that wasn't even a machlokes. Everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa, almanas comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. What was the machlokes Rabbi and the Rabbanon? Only in one very specific case. What specific case? In the gittin case of mehayom ula'achar misa. Rabbi says retroactivity clause. The Rabbanon say, we don't know what to do with that. Is that a retroactivity clause or is that retraction? Not exactly sure about that. So we'll stop over here for today. Okay, we made good headway today. We'll stop here for today. So tomorrow we'll finish up the rest of the sugya, and in Emiras Hashem we'll also do the halacha l'maisa in the machlokes Rabbi Rabbanon, Rav Huna, and Rav Yehuda. We'll say shkoyach.